Hello and welcome to more history stuff. So in this video, just to complete the set, I thought I'd take a look at the Battle of Falkirk as depicted in Braveheart. This is the battle historically in which Edward I defeated William Wallace in 1298. So let's go straight into it, and as usual, if I see anything interesting, I'll pause the video and try and say something intelligent over the top of it. So here we go, I think. Yes. Okay, already a comment springs to mind. The Scots are arranged here in a big disorganised mob, which they shouldn't be. At Falkirk, Wallace set his army up very carefully with a line of 4 spear rings or skiltrons, archers in the gaps between, and then a reserve of cavalry behind. And his flanks and rear were guarded by a wood. The cinematic Wallace, played by Mel Gibson, hasn't done any of that. He hasn't bothered. Just put his men in a great big mob in the middle of a big field, and that's fine. That's clearly great generalship. Brilliant grasp of strategy and tactics there. Hey, meet we lads. Again, the Scots looking like something out of a New Romantics video in the 1980s.
You'll come. Mornay and Lachlan have come. So will the Bruce.
Mornay and Lachlan are entirely fictional. The Scottish nobleman who is in command of the cavalry at Falkirk was in fact John Comyn of Badenoch, who played a very important role in the Scottish Wars of Independence, and so of course naturally he's not in the film at all, which is, you know, great, really helpful.
Quite lovely.
Oh, can you tell who that is? The guy with the hat. Wouldn't you agree? Patrick McGoohan as Longshanks, Edward I. Patrick McGoohan is pretty much the best thing in this film by a million miles, in my opinion, and I think in quite a lot of other people's opinion as well. He's an interesting actor, Patrick McGoohan. Made his name in the 1960s in a very strange, quirky TV series called The Prisoner. And then afterwards he faded from view a little bit. He played lots of supporting roles. He appears in a few episodes of Columbo in the 1970s, I think. By the time you got to Braveheart in the mid-1990s, he was in semi-retirement, really. Mel Gibson persuaded him to come out and play Longshanks. And he is the most talented actor in the cast by a long way. Wipes the floor of everyone else, Mel Gibson included. And yeah, he is the most sort of magnetic screen presence in the entire film. I don't think he plays Edward I in any sort of realistic way. I'm quite interested in Edward, and I don't think this is any kind of portrayal of the real man at all. But as a movie villain, as a villain for this film, he's absolutely perfect. And he's given all the best lines, which, you know, it's a bit like the Alan Rickman effect. If you remember Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Alan Rickman is the wicked sheriff of Nottingham. He is far more entertaining than poor old Kevin Costner as Robin Hood. He's given all the best lines, and he's a much better actor, much more entertaining. And it's the same with old Patrick.
The archers are ready, sire.
Not the archers. My Scots tell me their archers are miles away and no threat to us. Arrows.
Listen to his voice, his wonderful, old-fashioned Shakespearean theatrical voice, rolling his R's all the time. Arrows cost money. Use up the Irish. I'm so evil. I'm such a wicked villain. Dearie me.
Cost money. Use up the Irish. The dead cost nothing. And send in the
economics there, see.
Infantry! Cavalry!
Notice how the Irish are sent into battle by a man waving a flag that's got the Guinness logo on it. I think that's probably my favourite moment in the film.
Cavalry!
sending in the Irish. English behind, of course. Oh, he's so arrogant. Bizarre uniforms again. So Wallace and his men are just going to charge. Again, brilliant tactics. Irish. Scots. Scots. Irish. You see, the Irish aren't going to fight the Scots. This is a very cynical marketing ploy in the film. The writers, in order to appeal to an Irish-American audience in the US, they realised they couldn't show the Irish fighting with the English against the Scots, because of course the Scots are the heroes. That would never do, so they show them joining Wallace at Falkirk. As I say, very cynical. I'm sure it helped the film make lots of money, so I guess that's fine, if you like. But needless to say, in reality, the Irish were perfectly happy to fight against the Scots, and did so many times.
Irish. Glad to have you with us. What's this?
This section is quite interesting. Obviously nothing to do with what actually happened at the real Battle of Falkirk, but the idea of these flaming arrows and lighting up oil on the field and burning the English, that's actually taken from the final battle scene in Spartacus, if you remember that, with Kirk Douglas in the 1960s. It's what his army of slaves do against the Roman legions led by Laurence Olivier, and that directly inspired this. There's quite a lot of similarities between Spartacus and Braveheart. I think the screenplay for Braveheart was based far more on the Kirk Douglas movie than it was on anything to do with the historical reality. Oh dear. Again, just like the Battle of Stirling previously, both sides are shown charging together and meeting a great big mob in the middle of the field, like sort of football crowds brawling in the street or something. Don't think medieval battles really like this, but never mind. It looks good. Wallace is of course invulnerable. He takes down one English soldier after another, and again they do this thing where the bad guys always attack him one at a time, and nobody ever tries to stab him in the back while two other guys are attacking him in the front. That would seem to be the sort of sensible thing to do, but they never do it in these films. I wonder why. You see, this is where Wallace is betrayed. He's on the point of winning the battle, but then the Scottish nobles Mornay and Lachlan, they decide to stab him in the back, the treacherous swine, turn around and lead their cavalry off the field. This is actually based on a sort of reality. The Scottish cavalry did ride off the field at Falkirk, but they probably didn't betray Wallace as such. One of the many things that this scene doesn't show is the sheer number of cavalry, of heavy cavalry that the English brought to Falkirk. Edward had something like 2,500 knights and men-at-arms, which for the time was an enormous number of cavalry. And the Scots under John Comyn probably had something like 300 to 400. And Comyn probably took one look at the advancing mass of English horsemen and decided there was no point sticking around to get massacred, and he just turns around and rides off the field and leaves Wallace to cope with the English alone, which isn't quite the same as what's being shown here. The point being, of course, that this being a Hollywood movie, the hero can only lose if he's betrayed. He cannot be shown to lose a battle because the other side are simply better than him. That Longshanks, for instance, is a better general. Can't have that. Good guys don't lose unless they get betrayed or the other side cheats. Something like that. This is the view of the world that these big budget Hollywood cinema productions choose to get across. Everything is black and white. The world is divided into heroes and villains, and it's it's very childish, really, and in a way probably quite damaging, because the world isn't like that. People aren't like that. They never have been, and the 13th century certainly wasn't.
Mornay, Lachlan.
I gave Mornay double his lands in Scotland, with natural estates in England.
Sneaky old Longshanks.
Scotland turned for much less archers.
I beg pardon, sire. Won't we hit our own troops?
Yes, but we'll hit theirs as well. We have reserves. Attack!
Archers!
So again, this vaguely resembles what happened at the real battle. Edward is supposed to have used archers to turn the tide against the Scots. But once again, you cannot show the villain defeating the hero in any kind of fair way. So what Edward does, being a sneaky, evil sort of guy, is that he orders his archers to shoot his own men in the back. Of course he does, because that's the only way a bad guy can win, right? Is by cheating. This is also quite a good opportunity to get rid of some of the lesser characters in the film, some of the supporting Scottish characters. They just get mown down by arrows, so you don't have to see them again. Oh, he's bought it. That's the end of James Cosmo, if anybody recognised him. It's alright though, he pops up again in Outlaw King as Robert the Bruce's father.
Send in the rest!
Send in the reinforcements.
Bring me Wallace. Alive if possible. Dead, just as good. Send us news of our victory. Shall we retire?
You have to love the way he says that. Send us news of our victory. Shall we retire? He is brilliant. You see, Wallace is indestructible. He's been hit by an arrow in the chest, but he just breaks it off. You know, doesn't bother him. He's just that hard. Yeah, and he just keeps on killing those English soldiers. And then the clip ends. So what happens at the end there is that Wallace sees Longshanks riding off the field, and so he grabs a horse and chases after him. And again, that is the film attempting to explain why Wallace basically leaves his army to be slaughtered at Falkirk, which is what he did in reality. And the reason really was because he wanted to survive. There's no point sticking around. He'd lost the battle, and if he'd stayed where he was, he would have been captured and executed or just killed on the battlefield. But this being a Hollywood film, Wallace is the hero. He can't be shown to be running away. So what he's got to do is something heroic. He's got to grab a horse and try and kill wicked old Longshanks. So yeah, it's all sort of quite enjoyable nonsense, I suppose, on one level, so long as you switch your brain off. But really, it's again very cynical. In no way resembles the actual Battle of Falkirk. And while it's sort of fun to watch, you can see influences of other films, especially Spartacus in there, and the scale of it is impressive. It is just a load of nonsense. I don't know, I'm uncomfortable. I'm still uncomfortable with Braveheart. I thought I'd got over it, but when you actually sit down and watch particular scenes from the movie and take it apart and see what the writers were trying to do, it's yeah, it's not a good look. It's unpleasant, and overall, I really wish this film hadn't happened, that it hadn't been made. So yeah, sorry to end on a down note. I'll might make a few more of these videos. Hopefully find some better films online, better battle scenes, more interesting, even more accurate. That'd be good, wouldn't it? But for now, I'll sign off and hopefully speak to you again later.